The World Without Us by Alan Weisman. Picture this for a moment. Deep in the Amazon rainforest of Ecuador, an elderly woman named Ana Maria Santi sits watching her family. She's one of the last true elders of the Zapara people, a tribe that believes they descended from spider monkeys. On this particular day, there's a celebration happening, but Ana Maria isn't joining in. Everyone around her is drinking, even the children. They're preparing to eat a special meal, boiled monkey. A small, thumbless paw juts over the side of the bowl someone's offering to her. She pushes it away, and in a voice weathered by decades, she asks a question that echoes far beyond the Amazon. When we're down to eating our ancestors, she says, "What is left?" That question sits at the heart of one of the most fascinating thought experiments of our time, captured in the best-selling book, The World Without Us. Published in 2007, it has sold millions of copies and been translated into dozens of languages, not because it's a doomsday story, but because it's a story of wonder. The author, Alan Weisman, isn't a scientist or a prophet. He's a journalist, a storyteller. And for this book, he traveled the globe, from the last primeval forest in Europe to the contaminated ruins of Chernobyl, asking a single, breathtakingly simple question: what would happen to planet Earth if, tomorrow, every single human being simply vanished? Not through nuclear war or an asteroid impact that would destroy everything else, just us, gone. What would happen to our homes, our cities, our plastic, our art? How quickly would nature reclaim what we've built? And what, if anything, would be left of us 1,000 or 1,000,000 years from now? This isn't just a book about the end of humanity. It's a journey that holds up a mirror to the world we live in right now. By imagining a world without us, Weisman gives us the chance to see our own world with brand new eyes. He reveals the deep and often invisible mark we leave on this planet every single day. So join me as we step into this thought experiment. Let's explore what the world would look like and what it can teach us about who we are. So the day after tomorrow, we're gone, all 8 billion of us. What happens first? Well, the first thing that happens is that nature begins to clean house. And it starts with our houses. If you've ever owned a home, or even just lived in one, you know it's a constant battle. A battle against leaks, against mold, against weeds cracking the driveway. You're in a never-ending war against nature's relentless desire to reclaim the space you've carved out for yourself. The moment we vanish, we lose that war. It starts with water, a tiny leak around a chimney, a crack in a shingle. Water gets under the roof. It seeps into the wood, and the nails begin to rust. Mold begins to grow, its tiny filaments secreting enzymes that literally eat wood for breakfast. Inside the house, with the heat and air conditioning off, pipes burst in the first winter freeze. Rain blows in through windows cracked by the stress of sagging walls. Squirrels and raccoons chew their way inside, making nests in the drywall. Woodpeckers hammer through from the outside. Within about 50 years, maybe 100 at the most, the roof of a typical wooden house collapses. The walls lean, and then they fall. The house becomes a mound of rotting wood and debris, a perfect planter box for whatever seeds are blowing in on the wind. After 500 years, a temperate suburb is no longer a suburb. It's a forest. But it's a strange forest. Among the trees, you'd find some odd artifacts. The stainless steel pots and pans from your kitchen would still be there, maybe buried under leaves, but largely intact. Their plastic handles might be cracked and faded, but the steel itself could last for millennia. The ceramic tiles from your bathroom, chemically similar to fossils, would be lying in a pile, almost unchanged. An archaeologist from the far future might one day dig up these strange remnants, a dishwasher rack, a fork, a pile of tiles, and be deeply confused. They would be the only clues that a civilization was once here. But our homes are just the beginning. What about our grandest creations, our cities? What would happen to a place that seems eternal, a place like New York City? You might think a city of concrete and steel would stand for ages, but Alan Weisman takes us on a tour that reveals its greatest weakness: It's not earthquakes or storms. It's the city's own beating heart, hidden deep underground. The subway system. Every single day, the New York City subway pumps out about 13 million gallons of groundwater. That's just the water that naturally seeps in. When it rains, the amount is incalculable. There are 753 pumps running around the clock, powered by electricity. The day we vanish, the power goes out, the pumps stop, and the flood begins. Within 36 hours, the entire subway system is completely submerged. The water doesn't stop there. It starts seeping into the foundations of the skyscrapers above. It saturates the soil beneath the pavement. And soon, the streets themselves begin to collapse. Lexington Avenue, Weisman imagines, caves in and becomes a river once more, following the path of an ancient stream that was buried centuries ago. Above ground, the cycle of freeze and thaw begins its work. Water seeps into tiny cracks in the asphalt, freezes, expands, and splits the pavement open. In those new cracks, weeds take root. They're soon followed by the city's most tenacious invader, a tree from China called the ailanthus, or the tree of heaven. It can sprout in the tiniest crack in a subway tunnel and grow powerful enough to heave up entire sidewalks. Within just a few decades, New York's streets are no longer streets. They're green canyons. Bridges, no longer painted, begin to rust. Their expansion joints clog with debris and rust, and in the summer heat, the steel has nowhere to expand. The weakest links, the bolts and connections, begin to shear off. Within a few centuries, the great bridges connecting Manhattan to the world start to fall. Fires, sparked by lightning, sweep through the city, gutting buildings filled with paper and dry wood, and through the burnt-out skeletons of skyscrapers, nature returns. Virginia creeper and poison ivy climb the walls. Hawks and falcons nest on the high floors. The herds of deer, bear, and wolves that have been slowly returning to the edges of our civilization now find an open invitation. They cross the fallen bridges, and Manhattan once again becomes the wild, hilly island the Native Americans called Mannahatta. This isn't just fantasy. Weisman takes us to real places that are living previews of this world without us. One of them is a ghost town on the island of Cyprus called Varosha. In the early 1970s, it was a booming Mediterranean beach resort, the Riviera of Cyprus. But in 1974, a war split the island, and Varosha ended up in a fenced-off military zone. Its 20,000 residents fled overnight. Decades later, it remains frozen in time. Weisman describes a place where nature is actively reclaiming a modern city. Trees are growing straight out of living rooms. Wild cyclamen flowers have pushed their way through cracks in the pavement, heaving aside slabs of concrete. Shop windows still display 1974 fashions, but the fabrics are tattered and coated in dust. Hotel lobbies have sand dunes in them, blown in from the beach. The whole city is a silent, eerie testament to how quickly our world begins to unravel when we're not there to hold it together. An even more powerful example is the Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, between North and South Korea. For over half a century, it's been one of the most dangerous, heavily militarized places on Earth. A 151-mile-long, 2.5-mile-wide strip of land bristling with soldiers, barbed wire, and millions of landmines. And because humans are afraid to go there, it's become one of the most incredible wildlife sanctuaries in Asia. The abandoned rice paddies have reverted to pristine wetlands. It's a haven for endangered species that have been pushed out of everywhere else. Asiatic black bears, Eurasian lynx, and even the nearly vanished Amur leopard have been spotted there. Most astonishingly, it's the wintering ground for two of the rarest birds on Earth, the red-crowned crane and the white-naped crane. These magnificent birds, symbols of peace and luck throughout Asia, glide silently over minefields and land in the marshes, completely oblivious to the two armies staring each other down just a few hundred meters away. The DMZ is a profound paradox. A landscape of intense human conflict has become a place of natural peace and renewal. It shows us, in the most dramatic way possible, that when human pressure is removed, life doesn't just return, it flourishes. But what about the things we've made that were designed not to break down? What about our most stubborn creations? Here, the story takes a darker, more permanent turn. Weisman introduces us to the world of plastics. He takes us to a beach in England, with a marine biologist named Richard Thompson. At first glance, it looks like any other beach. But when Thompson scoops up a handful of sand, he shows us something strange. Mixed in with the sand and tiny shells are dozens of tiny, colorful plastic cylinders. They're called nurdles. They're the raw material of the plastics industry, melted down to make everything from water bottles to car parts. They've spilled from cargo ships and factories, and now they're found on virtually every beach in the world. The problem with plastic isn't just the big stuff that we see, the bags that choke sea turtles, or the six-pack rings that strangle birds. The real, long-term problem is that plastic never truly goes away. It just breaks down, not breaks up. Under the relentless power of sunlight and waves, a plastic bottle or a grocery bag is slowly ground into smaller and smaller pieces, until it becomes a kind of microscopic powder. These microplastics are now everywhere, in the water, in the soil, and in the bodies of animals. Scientists have found them in the smallest plankton at the bottom of the food chain, which means they're now in nearly every living thing in the ocean. Even if we all vanished tomorrow, every single piece of plastic we've ever made, over 1 billion tons of it, would still be here. It will be churned by the oceans, buried in sediments, and ingested by organisms for thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of years. It may very well be our most lasting and most insidious legacy. And then there's our hot legacy, our nuclear power plants. There are 441 nuclear reactors operating in the world today. Each one is a marvel of engineering, but each one requires constant human vigilance. Without us, that vigilance ends. Even if a plant is shut down correctly, the used fuel rods, which are stored in deep pools of water to keep them cool, will continue to generate immense heat. With no one to run the pumps, that water will eventually boil away. Once the rods are exposed to air, their zirconium cladding will ignite, and a radioactive fire will begin. The fire would burn through the roof of the storage building, releasing a plume of radioactive particles into the atmosphere. It would be a slow-motion Chernobyl, happening at every nuclear site on the planet. Radioactive isotopes like cesium-137 and strontium-90 would contaminate the soil and water for centuries. Heavier elements, like the plutonium in our 30,000 nuclear warheads, would remain dangerously radioactive for 250,000 years. Yet, even here, Weisman finds a strange kind of hope. He takes us to the real Chernobyl, inside the zone of alienation. What he finds is not a dead wasteland, but a world teeming with life. The forest has returned, thick and wild. It's full of radioactive moose, roe deer, and wild boars. And following them, their predators have returned. Lynx and wolves. Barn swallows nest inside the ruins of the reactor itself, though scientists have found that many of them have genetic mutations, like patches of white feathers. Their lifespans are shorter, but they seem to be adapting, maturing, and breeding earlier to compensate. Life, it seems, is more resilient than we could ever imagine. It can adapt to almost anything, even the poison we thought would be the end of everything. The lesson of Chernobyl is that the worst nuclear disaster in history is still less destructive to biodiversity than a typical human city. So if nature can recover from even our most toxic creations, what did the world look like before we ever arrived? And could it ever truly return to that state? To answer this, Weisman takes us back in time, to the end of the last ice age, when the first humans crossed the land bridge into North America. This was a world that would seem like fantasy to us now. It was a lost menagerie. There were mammoths and mastodons, giant ground sloths the size of elephants, and saber-toothed tigers with 7-inch fangs. There were camels and horses and giant beavers as big as black bears. North America, 13,000 years ago, was richer in large animal species than Africa is today. And then, in a geological blink of an eye, they were gone. About 70 entire genera of large mammals vanished. The paleoecologist Paul Martin proposed a controversial theory that Weisman explores, known as the Blitzkrieg hypothesis. He argued that it wasn't climate change that killed them, it was us. A small number of highly skilled hunters, armed with sophisticated spear points, arrived on a continent where the animals had no instinctive fear of this strange two-legged creature. In just a few thousand years, we hunted them to extinction. This brings up a fascinating paradox. Why did Africa's great animals, the elephants, rhinos, lions, and giraffes, survive? The answer is that they co-evolved with us. For millions of years, as our ancestors were slowly becoming the planet's most formidable predator, the animals of Africa were learning to be wary of us. They had time to adapt. The animals of North America never got that chance. The world before us was a world of giants, a world we unmade. But there are still places on Earth that hold a living memory of that time. The most powerful example in the book is the Białowieża Puszcza, a vast, ancient forest straddling the border of Poland and Belarus. It's the last remaining piece of the primeval lowland forest that once stretched all across Europe. Here, trees tower 150 feet high. Oaks that were seedlings 500 years ago grow so immense that their bark has furrows 3 inches deep. The air is thick with silence, broken only by the croak of a nutcracker or the wail of a wolf. Nearly a quarter of the life in this forest is dead and decaying wood, which nourishes thousands of species of fungi, beetles, and microbes that are missing from our managed tidy forests elsewhere. It's a complete, self-regulating world, a blueprint for what could return to Europe if given the chance. So after all the destruction, after the unraveling of our world, and the long, slow healing of nature, what would be left of the human spirit? What of our art, our music, our stories? Bronze statues, Weisman discovers, would be among our most durable creations. The copper in bronze forms a protective patina, a thin green film that shields it from further corrosion. Long after our steel skyscrapers have rusted to dust, a bronze sculpture could still be standing, its form intact, slowly turning to stone at the bottom of a new sea. But perhaps our most enduring legacy is also our most invisible. Starting with the first wireless transmissions in the early 20th century, we began sending electromagnetic waves out into the universe. These radio waves travel at the speed of light, and they never stop. The first broadcast of the I Love Lucy show, for example, is now nearly 70 light-years away from Earth. It's already passed dozens of star systems. The sphere of that signal is expanding constantly, carrying the image of Lucy and Ricky into the vast emptiness of interstellar space. In billions of years, long after our sun has expanded and swallowed the Earth, long after our bronze statues have turned to dust, those radio waves will still be traveling. They'll be stretched, weakened, and distorted, barely distinguishable from the background noise of the Big Bang. But they'll be there, a faint, ghostly echo of our laughter, our music, and our stories, rippling through the cosmos forever. It will be the last, and perhaps the most fitting, sign that once, for a brief and brilliant moment, we were here. Reading the world without us is a strange and deeply humbling experience. It's not a book that makes you feel guilty or angry or even sad. It makes you feel small. And in that smallness, there's a profound sense of wonder. The book isn't an argument for human extinction, as some might mistakenly think. It's a mirror. It uses this incredible thought experiment to show us the world as it truly is. Not a static backdrop for our lives, but a dynamic, powerful, and unbelievably resilient system that we're constantly shaping, whether we realize it or not. The most powerful lesson, for me, is the idea that we're not separate from nature. We are a force of nature. Alan Weisman shows us that humanity has become a geological force, as powerful as an ice age, a volcano, or an asteroid. Our cities are like artificial mountain ranges. Our farming has reshaped continents. Our chemical creations will form a unique layer in the Earth's strata for future geologists, or aliens, to discover. When you see the world through this lens, everything changes. You start to see the invisible. You notice the tiny weed pushing up through a crack in the sidewalk, not as an annoyance, but as the first pioneer in a forest that will one day reclaim that street. You see a plastic bottle on the side of the road not just as litter, but as an artifact that will outlast the pyramids. The book forces us to question our ideas of permanence. We build things to last, but Weisman shows us that even our greatest creations are temporary. Our cities will crumble, our dams will silt up, and our canals will become rivers again. Nature's timescale is so much grander than ours, and its processes are so much more powerful. So what can we take away from this? How can we apply this grand cosmic perspective to our own lives? First, I think it's about developing a new kind of awareness. The next time you walk outside, try to see the world as a place in constant slow-motion change. Look for the signs of nature's quiet, persistent work. It's in the moss growing on a brick wall, the roots buckling the pavement, the bird building a nest in a traffic light. When you start to see these things, you realize you're living in a much more interesting and alive world than you thought. Second, the book encourages us to think about our own legacy, not just as individuals, but as a species. What's the mark we want to leave? Do we want our defining artifact to be a layer of microplastics in the ocean sediment and a spike of radioactivity in the fossil record? Or can we be better ancestors? The book doesn't offer easy answers, but it makes you ask the right questions. And finally, despite all the destruction, this is an incredibly hopeful book. It's a celebration of life's resilience. The image of wolves returning to Chernobyl or cranes gliding over the Korean DMZ is a powerful reminder that life finds a way. The planet can recover from almost anything. As one scientist in the book says, if the planet can recover from the Permian extinction, it can recover from the human. The Earth doesn't need us, but we desperately need it. That was a summary of The World Without Us by Alan Weisman. We've touched on the major ideas today, but I have to be honest with you. A summary can only give you the blueprint of an experience. The real magic of this book is in the journey itself. It's in the quiet moments when one of Weisman's stories, or a simple, elegant description, lands in a way you didn't expect. This summary is here to help you decide if this book deserves your time. If anything we've talked about has sparked your curiosity or made you see the world just a little bit differently, I truly encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning facts. It's an experience that can genuinely change how you see your place in the universe. A link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book. Let's keep asking big questions and growing together.